So the question that everybody's asking, what we were left with at the end of episode 5 of Loki, is who is in the castle? And that answer will make or break this show, in my opinion. Because right now, the big... there's only two names that come up in this discussion in everyone's theory. Name one being King the Conqueror, and then second, a Loki variant. I don't know how I feel about a Loki variant, but I'm starting to think more and more that it might be a Loki variant. Kang makes the most sense, but I just don't know if they're going to introduce him at this point in the MCU. We know he's coming in the next Ant-Man film, I think in 2023. I don't know. Got Larry, Spencer, I'm Brian. We're here discussing Loki episode 5. This is Pulp Mythos. Who do you think's in the castle? And
Well,
would it bother you if it's a Loki variant?
no, but I also think that it being Kang, they could spin it to where Kang is a Loki variant, it would piss me off. But
Yeah, I don't know how to
that
feel
would
about
make me.
that.
But Kang, like I read a big article on him the other day because I remember him, but I wasn't a huge Kang the Conqueror. I didn't have a huge knowledge set, but Kang the Conqueror was real big with Fantastic Four. So they've already said that they're bringing in Fantastic Four. So I think that Kang the Conqueror, although he's slated to come in 2023 with the multiverse and everything else, we've been, contemplating who the next big bad guy could be. It could be Kang. And I think that they could do similar to what they did with Brolin, where he wasn't really credited as Thanos in the first couple times he appeared because it's literally just the Thanos face. It's just him there. He didn't really say anything. So Kang could be in multiple things prior to that, similar to how Thanos was, where it was just like a post-credit scene or something like that. And I would not be mad, but I would like it more if they use it to bring in like Fantastic Four or something like that as well.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And it's the sort of thing where, because of the way Kang operates, we may be seeing a Kang variant, because that's more of a Kang thing than it is a Loki thing, to be honest. Like, that's his whole gimmick, is that there are so many different versions of Kang
Yeah.
that you don't know who you're getting, and you could be getting one of the less powerful ones, even though I doubt it. What I feel like, much like the rest of the series, I feel like we're going to get hints of Kang, and it'll be a Loki variant in that castle, but we'll have hints of Kang that maybe that Loki variant didn't, make this castle or whatever, that it's something he stumbled upon when he was pruned by the TVA and decided to take over. It's something that was abandoned by Kang that he used to his advantage. Much like we got hints of Mephisto in WandaVision, but we never actually saw WandaVision. I feel like the character's too big for them to actually use, and it'll just be Loki again.
Yeah, I think that's a big possibility. We're only getting this one episode left, and going back to what you said about WandaVision, you set up a character in that, and for that, I was a little more. The more I thought about it, I was like, you know what, they did give hints, but not a whole lot. So maybe okay, it led just to the witch Agatha, but in this, the amount of hints that it's Kang is overwhelming. I mean, matter of fact, if it's not Kang, they completely were trying to make you think it was. And that's just the fact. I mean, going from, and I have a list here, Aeloth, the big creature that was guarding the castle, that's connected directly to Kang in the
Yep.
comics. Yeah, it's only appeared when in a Kang story.
Yeah.
The building with Kang, the Stark Tower with Kang written on it, that was a point in history where Kang had a company that took over Stark Industries, and it was spelled with a Q. That's in this trailer. There's tons of hints that it's that Kang's involved in this story, and yet I think it might not be him. I think yet again it's them. It's a red herring, and that it's just going to be a Loki variant, which could work if the Loki variant, if it makes sense. I mean, the big question is, why does the TVA target the Lokis so much? I think that's one of the important questions that's being asked. What is it about Lokis that's a pain in the ass to whoever's in that castle?
I think that that's how, if you want to do it that way, you could tie the Kang story in that way. That maybe Loki is the one that's the biggest problem for Kang. So depending on the other timelines he was in, at the end of this episode when Sylvia and Loki were working together, he was like, I'd never realized how strong we were. I think that we are way stronger than we think. So I think with the one Loki who was basically conjuring like an entire Valhalla, like
We're
he was,
dubbing him Old Loki.
yeah,
At least
but
the internet has.
but he was showing how strong Loki actually is. So I think that Loki may be thwarting Kang in other timelines. So the other variants of Loki are thwarting the other variants of Kang, and I think that that's the reason that Kang may be doing it. So it may kind of like how there's a couple evil Reed Richards, like actually there's
Couple.
evil. There's mostly evil Reed Richards and only a couple good ones.
Yes.
But I think that this may be like a similar kind of thing where the Lokis are all pretty much a pain in the ass to Kang, but Kang is trying to get the one Loki who is more apt to help him, and maybe he's the one helping him.
Yeah,
There's one Loki variant helping Kang.
I agree. It's the sort of thing where it's like, why would you be targeting this one person because of the main person foiling his plans, and and likely because Loki, it may be a consistent thing that Loki, that the variants from each particular universe typically wind up eventually joining the TVA and thinking like, well, if I was a time traveling conqueror, what would I do? Because who would be more likely to fit that role than Loki, and be able to follow Kang's MO. So Loki may be the most effective at catching him. So he may be displacing all of these Lokis for that reason. But in my mind, though, that makes it all the more likely that it's a Loki, because he's like, yeah, these are the only people that stand a chance of catching me due to his ego. Again, which we discussed at great length the last episode. I think it's another Loki who has achieved some level of power and has decided that the only threat to them are the other Lokis.
Speaking of other Lokis, we got quite a few in this episode, including they all had names on the internet. Old Loki, Kid Loki. We have the Gator. We had political or President Loki. We had the little fight for the throne. We get the knowledge that Kid Loki killed Thor.
Loki the boastful.
Yes. Yep. So yeah, that was fun. That was cool. This was we talked about like several episodes ago, people saying, "Oh, the show is really weird and cool," and I was like, "It's not that weird. This was weird.
Yeah,
and this is what I've been wanting. This episode was everything I've been wanting the show to be from the beginning." And 2 episodes in a row, episode 4 and this episode 5, I thought were amazing. And so that's why I'm getting nervous about the 6th episode, because if the 6th episode is solid, then to me, wow, this would be the best of these 3 shows, in my opinion. If the 6th episode is not, if they fumble the ball at the end, well, oh well, But
the fumbling at the end is what ruined Wanda for me.
Me too.
WandaVision, and then the end happened, and it ruined the entire thing. So that's like you said, my fear is that the first couple episodes of this, I didn't hate, but I didn't understand what was going on. Like, I didn't understand their footing. They weren't really pushing the envelope. And then all of a sudden they were. So now it shows me that the beginning episodes were just kind of setting the framework. So it makes me like them more after seeing these last 2 episodes. However, if the final episodes dog shit, or basically, like we've said 1,000 times before, it basically just comes full circle and doesn't mean anything, it's going to be very frustrating.
They've done an amazing job building Sylvie up, in my opinion. Like, at this point, I want that character to continue in the MCU.
Me too.
And it took time for that to get going. At first, I was very unsure about her, but now I'm like, okay, I'm for this character. I'm into her, and so to me, that's a big accomplishment so far for the show. We'll see, unless they do something stupid like kill her off. But let's go to Renslayer, or the queen of the TVA or the judge of the TVA, whatever you want to call her at this point. I'm very confused on her motives and what exactly is going on, because I kept thinking, well, maybe she knows more than she's letting on. She clearly knows something, but then at the end, when she asked Miss Minutes for information about the origins of the TVA and I guess the Time War and all that stuff, it led me to think, well, maybe she doesn't know everything. I think she knows more than she's saying, but I don't think she knows everything. She seems to just want the status quo to continue, regardless of the truth. Is there more to that character, or what do you guys think? Now, spoilers, if you know the comics, yet again, this character is heavily tied to Kang. But any thoughts?
I think, other than the Kang references, I think that it's not just necessarily the status quo, although people sometimes, like, that is 100% their entire agenda, is just keeping things the same. But I think that the tie into Kang, her knowing, maybe not perhaps exactly who it is, but maybe she knows more about what their end goal is, what they're trying to accomplish. And I think that she agrees with whatever their philosophy is. And I think that that is the reason she's not wavering at all, is because I think she knows more. I think she knows what, I'll just keep saying it's Kang because it's the only thing that makes sense at this point for right now. But
well,
like,
yeah, and you're absolutely right. And I think it may not be Kang now that she's tied to, but I think once we find out what her motivation is, that their motivations will overlap once the character, is revealed in the movies or what have you. And then she'll be tied to Kang. She may not be tied now, but I feel like in the future she will be, just how closely tied this character is to Kang the Conqueror.
Yeah, in the comics, yeah, very much so. The blanket scene, I wanted to specifically talk about that one scene because it was well done, and yet again, it's creepy and it's weird, but they're playing this romance strong, and the idea that Loki and Sylvie, there's something there. What does it mean for the sacred timeline? Why is it that this interaction between the two is threatening to the timeline? I thought it was a well played scene. I also like that sort of the discussion on how they feel about just life in general. That leading to the ending where she's sort of teaching him enchantment, and them seeing old Loki do what he did, and basically saying, "My God, we're more powerful than we realize." There was a lot of Loki development, character, and even his role within the MCU and Sylvie's. And I thought a lot of it stemmed out of that blanket sequence. Yeah, I just wanted to get your guys' thought on that relationship and that scene if you want.
Well, before I talk about the relationship, I do want to mention one thing. You mentioned that line again, we're more powerful than we thought. And that's another thing that I think puts another point in the idea that, towards the idea that this is likely, what they're up against is likely a Loki variant. Because I feel like that's foreshadowing that we are going to see a significantly more powerful Loki that's been manipulating this whole thing.
Played by Matt Damon.
now it just needs to be the other Olsen.
Who was it? No, who played in the little play in Asgard? It was Matt Damon, wasn't it?
I think so.
In Ragnarok. Remember when Loki was pretending to be Odin?
Yeah, I remember the scene, but
and he had the little play of the tragedy of Loki. Well, I think it was Matt Damon playing Loki in that scene.
That'd be so good.
Dude, what if it's Matt Damon playing like King God Loki? I don't
know.
But I do enjoy the relationship between Sylvie and Loki, and we talked about how they're both such huge narcissists that it just makes sense for them to fall for each other. However, and we talked about this before too, I don't remember if it was on air or off, but Loki is not a good guy. Well, previous to this season, and even the beginning of this season, he's murdered so many people and done so many things to just manipulate things to benefit him in his favor. But his growth with Sylvia, it seems like both of them are being less focused on themselves. And even if it's because they're focused on each other, which are basically themselves, which is kind of weird, but it's showing a more human and less manipulative, conniving side of both of their characters. And to me, if you want to spin Loki as this, not anti-hero, but anti-hero, I think this would be a great way to do it. I don't think that they need every story to be a good guy, happy ending for it to be successful, because to me that gets boring. And I enjoy, Punisher. Punisher really wasn't all that great of a guy. I love Daredevil, same kind of thing. Venom was even well done with Matt Hardy, and that's not that was an anti-hero kind of thing. Deadpool, a great example of that. None of them are great people, but it makes for interesting stories. So I don't think Loki needs to be great for this to be an interesting story, but I do like the Sylvie Loki angle because to me it shows character growth.
Agreed. Yeah, and isn't that hilarious? And I guess also kind of strange. I guess it does make it one strange thing in the show if you really think about it, that it's a person learning selflessness by falling in love with themselves.
Wow. That's true.
So it is a very interesting relationship in that way, and and also the whole her teaching him enchantments thing. That's very neat because that opens up the door to say, okay, Loki's got other powers and other abilities, maybe some other things that you've seen in the comics that he hasn't done yet in the movies. Because usually in the movies it's just like the illusions, and that's about it. He's got illusions and knives, and you would assume that he was the god of illusions and knives, from what we've seen of him in the films.
Yeah, I mean, going forward, I could see, it seems like they're building him in a way where, years from now, he could walk up to a Doctor Strange and just be like, hey, we're on the same plane,
Which should be the case because he's a god, and we see that kind of power from Thor, but it's a more direct kind of power. So we should be seeing a similar, more magical thing from Loki.
Strange, messed with him when they had their one encounter in Ragnarok. Loki couldn't do nothing to Strange, like nothing. And so, yeah, to see where he's progressing and what he's becoming going forward, yeah, very interesting.
I think they did a great job with that. As much as I didn't like the end of Wanda, to me that was the Scarlet Witch that I remember from the comics, like how strong she was, what she was able to do. Because in the Avengers movies, it was bullshit. She basically just shot little like Cyclops red beams out of her hands, and that was it. Like, it was the weakest version of Wanda that I've ever seen, yet we're supposed to respect her abilities and her powers. And it wasn't until the show that I saw the Scarlet Witch that I knew from the comics, and she is super powerful. And same thing kind of like with Loki. Like you said, he's just this mischief maker, but he hasn't really shown how powerful he is. And this series has done a great job in showing how powerful he can be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned that too, because towards the end of WandaVision, I was thinking to myself, like, now if I see her in the movies and she's back to being on the same level she was there, it's like I'd feel a little cheated by that. That would make that feel like it mattered even less. And I hope that's not the case. I hope we see these abilities that they've developed crop up in the movies as well.
We get Mobius's return, and he ends up helping, Loki and Sylvie and his new crew, and basically they have their little time device, and they give it to Mobius, and he's going to head back to the TVA with the mission. He states it very clearly. He's going to burn it down. So what does Mobius do? What do you think the fate of the TVA will be? Because, clearly we sort of have two storylines in the next episode based on the ending. We have Mobius going back to the TVA doing whatever it is he's going to do. And we have Loki and Sylvie heading to the castle at the end of time and dealing with we're assuming whoever's responsible for the TVA. Maybe there's a twist and that's not even the case. I don't know. But what is Mobius going to do, and what is the fate of the TVA? Because the TVA is huge. They show us that massive, insanely large city. There's a lot of people there. It is a big thing. What do you do with it going forward now that we know that its true purpose is bullshit?
I think that they show too, though. But when you look at what's his name, Eliath,
the smoke monster.
Yeah,
yeah,
he was in charge of keeping that realm and keeping the people from escaping that basically reality trap, I guess, timeline trap. But the TVA seems to be similar size to whatever Loki and them ended up, because they're pruning all these people, they're sending all these Nexus events to that one area. That's the reason it was so weird, and all the different Lokis, and a random ship pops up. Like, it's all these Nexus events go to one area, and that's where they're trying to push everything. But I am curious to find out where the TVA world, wherever that little crack in timeline is. It seems like a similar reality as far as size.
Where does it physically exist?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because remember, magic doesn't work there. And now whether or not that's a result of technology or location, I wonder.
Yeah, and that's a good question. Is it because it's outside of their universe, and maybe that's established thing that not only do the Infinity Stones not work in other universes, whatever type of magic you're using in your universe doesn't apply in other universes, or you have to relearn how to use magic in said universe due to different I don't know different physics or something.
Which to me would also tie in one to Kang,
Mm-hmm.
Eternals, and like there's a lot of different things that they've already kind of announced that it would tie in, that it's not necessarily in this universe or this plane of existence.
Right.
Not even just a timeline, just like not here at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's a different, not just a different time; it's a different space. It's and they can do a lot with that. And speaking of power scaling and everything, I'm just really curious. Like, I'm curious about the sword, because we did see our Loki get a sword from Kid Loki. Like, what sort of abilities do you think that have? I've never read the run of.
That's directly from the comic with Kid Loki. I don't know much. I've also not read the run, but I've read a couple articles on it over this past week. Yeah, it has some powers and stuff. I mean, it is directly from the comic.
Yeah, I thought so, 'cause I recall seeing Kid Loki with his sword, and I was wondering, because the only thing we saw it do is catch fire, and I'm like, well, if that's all it does, then that's not going to be very helpful. But like, I wonder if it could like manipulate fire the same way that Thor manipulates thunder, or something like that. And yeah, that brought me to another place where I'm thinking that if we're going to continue into a second season of the show, a good way to see character growth in Loki and the way he's developed, due to his new role, would be able to be, if we're still doing like reality hopping or time hopping or what have you, would be to have this version of Loki defeat another version of Thor that's fairly competent. Perhaps an evil Thor that's messing up time in some way.
What if it's just Hela at the end of time? There you go.
Well, then that character would have to be a lot better.
Yeah.
I pulled up an article explaining
The sword.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a legit Norse mythology sword, kind of like Mjolnir was the hammer. It's Loki's Astral Blade.
Yeah, I know you can like summon it at will or something.
It's got multiple translations because I don't know how to say it. It's like Laevateinn. It's a sword of deception, of wand of cunning, or a damaged twig.
Oh, that's cool. So that kind of implies that it can turn into like a wand and stuff too, like, and maybe you can channel magic through it.
Yeah.
That'll be neat to see.
Yeah. Do you think that, this is really my last question, then if you guys have anything, they keep highlighting, or at least everybody's pointing out, that the castle, there's like a tower or whatever, and it's lit up, it's really bright. Is that a hint of anything? Because like people are trying to break that down. What does that mean? Did it connect to us? There you go. Does that mean anything, or does that connect to something? Or
it's Rapunzel.
It's Rapunzel. There you go.
Nothing that I recall anything. It doesn't mean that it doesn't, but I can't recall any towers in comics that it would make sense to me. I did look at when I looked up Goliath, there is a comic. The picture that they show on Marvelpedia or whatever the Marvel version of Wikipedia that they have is that he's talking about something and he's eating this. It looks like a castle with a tower, but Kang is standing in the forefront. So
Yeah.
that's the only thing I can think of that is pointing towards him, but who knows?
As us, that thing being there, that was another, red flag, or what everybody was like, that's tied directly to Kang. Why would you put it there unless you were trying to imply that Kang's involved? But I like the idea y'all were posing, sort of, what if it's a Loki variant that just so happens to maybe work with Kang or have a connection to Kang, and maybe Kang's not in this, but we get the nod that he's coming.
And to me, that would be great because then it would be able to tie into the MCU without being vital to being watched, so that the MCU movies can still happen without you having to see the shows. But that would be a great way to kind of nod to Kang, but still have it be where Loki's still part of it, but you're not paying Jonathan Majors a bunch of money to be in 19 movies. He's just mentioned. He's not getting paid to be in it.
Well, yeah, and like it's heavily hinted. Well, it seems a lot like this is likely, Kang's base of operation, or his city, or his palace, what have you. And so it could be the sort of thing where this is because there are so many Kang variants in the comics. It could be the sort of situation where, like, oh, this is a long abandoned palace of a Kang, that was previously defeated, or something that Kang left behind in one time period. And, so good chance we could see a lot of references to the character in there, if not the character themselves in some form. And I could see something like that being taken over by a much more powerful Loki variant.
Played by Matt Damon.
Potentially played by Matt Damon. At this point of the show, they're getting weird enough that that's a possibility.
It'd be even better if they brought in like Ben Affleck. That way he's in the MCU and the DCU.
He's working on the Flash movie. I think they're going to kill him off in it. I think that's at least the rumor. But yeah, I don't think I have anything else for Loki. What's the next show? I don't know. I don't think I'm going to watch the next one. What If?
What If?
Yeah,
Actually,
that starts.
Tell you the truth.
Yeah, I'm thinking I'm going to check it out. I'm curious about a few of those.
You could tell me how they are.
Well, I only say that because I love those What If comics, and that's straight up 90s, and I enjoyed those comics because to me it depends on how they do this. If it's going to be an animated series, which I think it is,
yes,
to me it would be a great. They don't have to explain stuff, but like all the things that people are bitching about, you can be like, well, what if this happened, or what if Punisher really did take out this person? It to me would be a way to get some closure on some of the like Marvel Netflix shows. It'd be a way to kind of tie up some things, and to me it would be very beneficial for them to kind of bring everything back to the MCU and to Disney, and this would be a good way to do that.
Agreed. And like just like in the comics, this may be sort of a testing ground for, it's like, well, what do you want to see in the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Because oftentimes with the what ifs in the comics, there's a few of them that do really well, and they integrate that into the main Marvel universe. Like I believe Spider-Gwen was originally just a what if.
Yeah. So, and one of my favorite what ifs was when Hulk and Wolverine fought.
Yeah, I don't care. I don't like the animation style at all.
Oh,
in fact, I hate it. And I'm not going to watch 10 episodes of that. It's just not going to happen. But yeah, it starts in August. And yeah, it'll be 10 episodes.
Well, I think much like the What If comics, I doubt any of the episodes will really connect, or maybe only a few.
No, they're all separate.
Yeah, so like if you see something that catches your eye, and maybe the animation is better than what you saw in the trailer, then...
It's the same style throughout.
Oh, okay.
Have you not seen the new trailer?
I saw the trailer.
Okay. Yeah, it's one style.
Well, yeah, I guess if you're not into it, you're not into it.
No, I didn't watch Bad Batch. I'm not watching the What If. I don't care. Did that end? Bad Batch?
It hasn't. It's still going.
Oh, it's still going.
I think there's still like 4 or 5 more episodes in the season.
No clue.
It did not even break the top 10. Yeah, at all. I don't even know if it's in the top 20. I have to go check. There you go. That's the art style. We're looking at an image of it. But yeah, I don't have anything else.
Me neither.
Yeah, that's all I have.
Alrighty. Well, one left. We shall see. We will either be praising it or complaining. So tune in next week for that. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.